Greetings, and welcome to Arcana Analysis, where we invite you into the Velvet Room to unlock the secrets of the arcanum and the bonds they encompass. In this episode, we'll be discussing the Temperance Arcana. Temperance is the 14th major arcana, following death and preceding the devil. Temperance is a card that stands in stark contrast to its predecessor. Where death denotes upheaval and change, Temperance is the poster child for staying the course. Much as its name implies, it is the most restrained of the major arcana, standing for balance, peace, and simplicity. While perhaps the quietest and most understated of the major arcana, Temperance is by no means timid. Rather, there's trust to it, a stability and faith in one's abilities and current efforts. A testament to the multiple vessels or symbols often seen in its art, Temperance can also be a card that alludes to multiple forces, paths, or problems. Its call for balance can often serve as a reminder to avoid tunnel vision, and to take care in how we divide time and effort in our lives. This allusion to balancing many issues is often what the Persona series focuses on, as being a card of peace and harmony can make it a bit difficult to wring the conflict necessary to drive a story out of Temperance. This understated nature may also be why Temperance is the only major arcana to never have been associated with a Persona user. It is the very antithesis of turmoil and growth. The social links aligned under it are concerned with mundane pressures and problems instead of the mythical, though by no means does that make their struggles any less harrowing. These individuals come to find themselves immensely distressed and overwhelmed by conflicting factors that pull them in different directions. For some time, they struggle to find the tranquility that Temperance promises, but eventually, they come to a means of making peace with their situations, with a little help from the protagonist. Personas aligned under the Temperance Arcana tend to emphasize balance and harmony either through their own myths or through their combined myths. Perhaps the most notable example would be Byakko, Suzaku, Seiryu, and Genbu, divine beasts of legend that have long been a matched set that represent cardinal directions, virtues, temperaments, and much more, creating a balance between the four of them.
Within Persona 3, the Temperance Arcana is embodied by André Laurent Jean Giraud, better known by his nickname, Bébé. Originally born in France, André would grow to cherish another world, that of Japan. He'd delight in the culture and fashion of the Japanese people, and that fascination inevitably brought him to study abroad. As a foreign exchange student of Gekkokan High School, Bébé creates a fashion club as a vessel to meet others and share his interests with them. Unfortunately, his haphazard use of the Japanese language makes all promotional materials for the club indecipherable to nearly anyone, save for the heightened intellect of the protagonist. Upon formally meeting Bébé, the two form a social link, within which André's struggles to balance between worlds becomes all too apparent. The most prominent are his struggles to fully grasp the language, often misusing terms or foregoing the use of Japanese altogether. Despite his struggles, Bébé never gives up, instead facing every challenge with an unwavering resolve. His interactions with the protagonist are what ultimately improve his vocabulary, this new insight forging a more powerful bond between the two. As Bébé becomes closer to the protagonist, he reveals deeper insight into his fascination with Japan. This passion was inspired by his aunt, who first introduced the boy to this new cultural landscape. She alone would encourage Bébé to travel abroad during his studies, while the boy's uncle vehemently opposed the idea. Not much else is known about Bébé's family, as within the link, he comes to learn that his aunt has passed away during his absence. This is revealed to the boy in a letter sent by his uncle, who urges Bébé to return to France at once. This revelation shakes André to his core, putting into question which he cherishes most, his family or his passion. Through the aid of the protagonist, Bébé resolves to return to France, but with him, he plans to bring the culmination of his studies abroad, a kimono deeply inspired by his relationship to the protagonist. With this, he hopes to convince his uncle that there is still a place for him in Japan, and that his choice to study in a foreign country was not as frivolous as he might believe. Towards the end of the game, the protagonist receives a letter from Bébé, who has received his uncle's blessing to return. Despite this, he resolves to stay in France longer than expected, to support his family as they grieve. impassioned, and at times impulsive, André Laurent Jean Giraud's struggles with identity embody the spirit of the Temperance Arcana. While at first there is a disquiet within his soul, a raging tempest of emotions pulling him between two different worlds, Bebe learns to find a balance in due time. Without his home and his family, the boy would never have come to Gekkokan, never have made a true friend in the protagonist. Though he yearns for Japan, Bebe remains in France, never truly choosing one over the other. Instead, he keeps in mind that his home can exist in both countries.
In Persona 4, a young woman named Eri Minami holds the Temperance Arcana. The player meets Miss Minami through his work at the daycare, where she is quite often the last parent to show up, leaving her son, Yuta, waiting past normal business hours. Yuta himself seems none too pleased with the situation, acting either timid or outright hostile when she arrives. Almost immediately, the protagonist becomes aware of the gossip swirling around the daycare about Eri and Yuta both. The other caretakers seem to have a rather low opinion of them, framing Yuta as an impulsive and overly energetic boy, and Eri as a useless woman from the city who doesn't know what she's doing. This is also where we learn that Eri is Yuta's stepmother. The two are not related by blood. We find this wrinkle to be one of the main dysfunctions in their relationship when the player begins speaking to Eri herself and forms a bond with her. Though she's trying her best at being a good mother, she doesn't know what to do. Taking care of Yuta was a job suddenly thrust upon her when the man she married hid his son's existence until just before their wedding. To make matters worse, Eri's husband and Yuta's father is often away on business trips, leaving the two step-strangers alone together. Eri, alone in a new house, in a new town, and with a new child, is left to figure things out for herself, and she's having a rather rough go of it. Yuta didn't take to her. He is standoffish and has a poor reputation among teachers and other parents. These fellow mothers that should have been peers and friends to Eri swiftly dismiss her as clueless city folk far out of her depths, and a total failure of a mother. With her husband away, she is bereft of support, and, in true Temperance fashion, left unbalanced and worn thin by the many pressures around her. Throughout the link, we see Eri make limp attempts at connecting with Yuta. She offers to bring him to expensive restaurants or buy him toys, but nothing seems to win his affections, and Eri worries that a stepmother and stepson can never have a true familial bond. She's so scared of reaching out to and interacting with Yuta sincerely that she puts off picking him up from daycare, instead choosing to sit and stew in her worries at the floodplain. In truth, Eri has fallen victim to the gossip about her stepson, believing him to truly be an unruly and difficult child. This picture painted in her mind by her peers clouds her vision, keeping her from actually seeing the boy in front of her. Yuta is not an especially uncouth child. In fact, he's just as nervous and lost as Eri is. He bears his stepmother no ill will, and he would like to have a positive relationship with her. Yuta is just unsure of how to approach this new figure in his life, and similarly left without support. With a small push from the protagonist, a hint at what Yuta's interests are, Eri and Yuta begin to bond. Once the ball is rolling, the two quickly turn thick as thieves. Yuta even becomes protective of his stepmother, going so far as to give the player a hefty shove when he thinks they're bullying his mother. A level, calm outlook at the situation was all it took to restore balance to both Yuta and Eri's lives. Almost immediately, both become healthier and happier people. The mundane yet precious manner of their conflict and the peace that comes from its resolution is indicative of the Temperance Arcana and its championing of level heads and tranquil hearts.
The bearer of the Temperance Arcana within Persona 5 is Sadayo Kawakami, the homeroom teacher to the protagonist. At first glance, this teacher appears to be equipped with a cool head and an even temperament, standing out from the other staff at Shujin Academy as one of the most capable and caring. Below the surface, however, is a bubbling turmoil that is only revealed following Operation Maid Watch. When ordering from a local maid service, the protagonist discovers that Kawakami moonlights as a housemaid. Given the service's proclivity towards adult activities, the two parties elect to keep this encounter a secret, going on about their lives. It is only after seeing Sadayo pestered by a fellow teacher about her lack of availability after class that the protagonist intervenes, using private tutoring as an excuse for her recent absence. This initial lie forges their confidant, wherein the protagonist keeps her secret while continuing to request her services. While she does provide the occasional cleaning or opportunity to slack off during her lessons, Sadayo's meetings with the protagonist are more often than not a space for her to vent her frustrations. Though she appears to live a balanced life on the surface, in reality the woman is exhausted by her endless supply of tasks, and seemingly struggling to make ends meet. Given her age, she claims that she is not nearly as popular among clients as other maids, leaving her to work twice as hard for even less pay. All of this detracts from her true passion for education. This dedication to aiding her students is, in truth, the reason for her monetary struggles. Years ago, Kawakami took special interest in a student named Takase, who was viewed by the school as a delinquent, disinterested in education. His poor grades were truly a result of being stretched thin, having to work several jobs to pay his living expenses. All the while, his current guardians remained willfully ignorant of the boy's struggles. Upon learning Takase's story, Kawakami resolved to tutor him whenever possible, the two growing quite close during the process. All this special attention towards one student caught the ire of Shujin's staff, who would force Kawakami to end her extracurriculars with Takase. The very same day she told the boy, he was caught in a fatal car accident. To this day, Takase's guardians blame Kawakami for the boy's passing, stating that it was his fatigue from all her extra work which made him succumb to the elements and pass away that fateful night. They presented the school teacher with an ultimatum: face legal action or provide them monthly payments. In an effort to preserve her position at Shujin Academy, Kawakami chose the latter. Following this confession, Sadayo begins to push herself too far, ending up in the hospital from overwork. This also coincides with the date of her next payment, which leads Takase's guardians to confront the bedridden schoolteacher. With no other options available, the Phantom Thieves intervene, changing the hearts of the money-hungry guardians. Without the demand for monthly payments, Kawakami resolves to quit her job as a maid and focus instead on teaching. Throughout this confidant, Sadayo Kawakami faces several forms of turmoil which brings an imbalance to her life. She is initially caught between two worlds which she struggles to balance between, all while her financial situation is deeply unstable. The root cause is the discord in her heart, plagued by guilt and grief for the loss of her former student. However, as the layers of her struggles are slowly peeled away, the rushing current of her life becomes a gentle stream, a calm that is befitting one aligned under the Temperance Arcana.
This concludes our examination of the Temperance Arcana.
It is all too common to see the ebb and flow of daily life swell into a vicious storm of crashing waves that takes every ounce of strength to endure.
However, those moments of discord can be overcome with a level head and a calm heart. To master balance in the face of adversity is the true spirit of temperance.
We hope you've enjoyed your stay with us in the Velvet Room, and we look forward to seeing you again. Until then, we bid you adieu.